Hello, Russell. Thanks for joining us. Now, there's been a massive print run of 300,000 copies of Michel Houellebecq's eighth novel. It's his first since he was bestowed France's highest national honour, the Légion d'honneur, for his services to French literature by President Emmanuel Macron. Now, why are his books always considered national events?
Wow, what a question. There aren't many writers writing in French today that do what Houellebecq does. Houellebecq likes to describe himself as bringing uncomfortable truths out into the public domain. And those uncomfortable truths can be about the modern world. They can be about sex. They can be about consumerism. They can be about religion, particularly Islam. His novels talk about the things that I think people like to talk about, but don't necessarily see reflected in their bookshops on the shelves of their local librairies. So he's very much he's got his finger on a pulse. He starts conversations. People either love Houellebecq or they absolutely despise him. He gets people talking. He reflects the contemporary conversation, and that's not always easy reading. But it's easy to form an argument, and you've always got something to talk about after you finish reading a Houellebecq novel. That's for sure.
So he braves subjects many novelists would never dare to write about, and his narrators are often depressed, misogynistic and homophobic. What can you tell us about the new book?
The new book isn't going to cheer up anybody's rainy, gloomy Januaries, that's for sure. In many ways, this new novel is contingent with what Houellebecq's done before. What is Houellebecq known for? Well, Houellebecq is known for dramatizing aging, depressed, alcoholic, sex-obsessed narrators that may or may not be thinly veiled avatars for the novelist himself, right? There's always this feeling when you're reading Houellebecq, when you're reading his characters, that you're kind of into an encounter with the gloomy, pessimistic figure of Houellebecq himself. He does that in this novel, that's for sure. The central protagonist, the central character, is a guy, however, called Paul Raison, who is a high-ranking civil servant in the French Ministry of Finance, right? So far, so familiar. What Houellebecq does a little bit differently in this novel is it's not as provocative as his previous work, or provocative not in the same way, I would say. The last couple of novels, Soumission, that came out in 2015, was a novel that came out on the same day as the Charlie Hebdo massacre and was a novel about Islam. It was a novel that kind of was much discussed, much debated, and was incendiary. His last novel was about Michel Houellebecq himself. It was a kind of really disappointing rant about basically him not getting enough sex. This novel is slightly more delicate. This is a novel that takes the political thriller frame and then juxtaposes it with a story about the protagonist's father having a medical incident, having to go into a nursing home, which leads to a big rural family drama. It's a kind of strange mashup between family melodrama and political thriller. And there's a strange subplot as well about a weird, zany terrorist organization that is attacking France and French interests around the world. What I think is really interesting about this novel, however, is it's political, but political in a different way to his previous works. It's a deeply conservative novel, whereas his previous books might have been a little bit more reactionary or inflammatory. Where's the politics in this novel? Well, it's not the politics that we might be expecting. It's not the right-wing Eric Zemmour-style firebrand ranting that we've seen from Houellebecq before. This is actually a consideration about getting old, a consideration about dying. You know, the title translates as Annihilate, as you said. You could also translate it as exterminate, as my friend Louise suggested to me. But what isn't being annihilated, what is being exterminated in this novel? It's life itself. This is a novel about death. This is a novel that considers how we treat old people, the elderly in our society. This is a novel that talks about the failures in the French nursing home system. This is a novel that talks about euthanasia and associated politics. It's possibly Houellebecq's bleakest novel so far, but I think it's one that's very, very good.